Hey, this is Deepak here, and welcome to day 4 of your 100-day blogging course. In today's lesson, we are going to have a look at web hosting and DNS settings. In the previous lessons, you might have already chosen a topic for your blog, and you might have already chosen a domain name for your blog as well. So once that you have a topic for your blog and now you have a domain name, the next step would be to get a web hosting account and get your blog up and running. So there are a lot of basics that you need to understand when it comes to web hosting and DNS. So that's what we are going to cover in this lesson. So first let's look at the basics. I would recommend that as a blogger or marketer, all you need to do is just understand the basics. You really don't need to go ahead and develop tech knowledge on all the hosting aspects because your focus should be on content, marketing and sales. If you get into the tech area of web hosting, which is usually called DevOps in many startup companies, it's a very complex subject and you might end up wasting a lot of time understanding all the technicalities when it comes to servers, IPs, hosting, web servers and all those things, that you might start losing focus on the main thing that you should be focusing on, which is creating content, delivering it to your audience and marketing it. So end of the day, this is just tech and you just need to understand the basics. When we look at the basics, what are all the basics involved? So some of the basics you might need to learn are cPanel, domain names, DNS settings, and how to get backups. So these are all the basics that you need to learn. So when it comes to the basics, let's first understand what is a web server. So web server is basically a computer which is serving your website files. So technically your computer can serve your website files over an internet connection if you configure it the right way. So it has an operating system. For example, if you install the Apache web server or Nginx server, your own laptop or the computer that you are using now can actually act as a server. So what happens is that it has to be connected to the internet 24/7 to transfer the files from your computer to the computer which is requesting it. So in the last lesson, we learned about domain names and how a domain name points to an IP address. So some of the requirements that you will need is, first you need to have a static IP address. Most of the internet connections that we have from our internet service provider is not a static IP address. So every time you disconnect and connect, the IP address keeps changing. And also the internet connection needs to be very reliable for the user's computer to always access your computer. So this is just to help you understand how a web server works, right? A web server is not a very complex thing. It's just a computer which is hosting your files. It has to have a static IP address so that domain name can get the files from that IP address. It needs to have a operating system which is a web server operating system such as Apache web server, and obviously it has to be connected to the internet with a very reliable connection so that anyone in any part of the world can actually access it. But in real world scenario, it's impractical to use your own computer as an operating system, as a web server, because first thing, it's very difficult to configure the operating system in it. Second thing, it might not be able to handle all the traffic that is coming to it because your laptops or your computer's server processor is not able to handle the traffic. And you might not have a static IP address and the internet connection may not be very reliable where it is connected to the internet 24/7. So we have all these difficulties and that is why we go for professional web hosting. So when it comes to professional web hosting, what is going to happen is that these web hosting companies are going to manage it for you. There are going to be a lot of employees and they are going to have experience in handling these type of servers, and they will have a static IP address. They will be connected to the internet 24/7 so that the domain name can point to it and fetch the files anytime. So very large companies will have their own servers, for example, Amazon, Google, and all these large companies. And even I have seen a lot of large companies in India who manage their own servers. They will have technicians. And since their business is big enough, the cost of managing their servers is okay to handle it because, it works out for them. But, we as bloggers, it's always recommended to go for professional web hosting because they will be hosting many different websites in a single server, and that is how the cost works out. So we will understand a little bit about economies of scale as well. So this is a bit off topic compared to hosting, what we are talking about, but this is a very important topic that you should learn about because it applies to blogging as well. So economies of scale basically means that the cost per unit will go down when the production goes up. So which means that let's think about a car manufacturing company manufacturing cars. If they are manufacturing, let's say, only 100 cars per day, and let's say each car costs 5 lakhs, then if the same company, if they are manufacturing 1000 cars per day instead of 100 cars per day, they will be able to reduce the price of each car to 4 lakhs or 3 lakhs, because with larger production you will have much cheaper unit cost, because the technology increases, automation increases, and a lot of processes get more efficient. So you can go ahead and Google about economies of scale, read a Wikipedia article, or go ahead and watch a few YouTube videos. So that's what we are looking at here. When there is a lot of units in a single production line, the cost per unit comes down. So that is what the sharing economy is all about, right? So one road, many people who use it, these are public utilities, and one car, many people use it, these are cabs. One dedicated server and many shared websites. So this is basically shared web hosting. When you see hosting companies offer shared web hosting, it means that they have a single dedicated server and they probably host 500 or 1000 different websites in a single server. And since many people are using the same server, the amount of money that each person is paying is much less compared to kind of taking the entire dedicated server for one website. So it also applies to my own course, where if I have more students, then the quality goes up because I will be able to focus more. So for this 100-day blogging course, we have had 1000 students and more than 1000 students enroll for this course. And since we have more than 1000 students, I am able to dedicate more time and come up with more quality content because I am able to pay for my time that way. So this is again economies of scale, and it applies to your blogging efforts as well, because you are offering the same content, but if you have more users, then you will be able to make more revenue, and then you will be able to add more people to your team and create even more quality content for your audience, because it's the same content, it's the same article that you write, but instead of, let's say, 100 people reading it, 1000 people are reading it, you are going to get much more out of the same article than what you would get with much lesser users. So this is the sharing economy which I wanted to share some thoughts on. So now that we have talked about the sharing economy, we also have to understand that the hosting price is directly related to the quality levels that can be given with support, because human support is not scalable and there is no economies of scale when it comes to human support, because it's just one-on-one time, and with more customers you just need more human support people. So that has a direct correlation to the cost. So when you look at shared servers are cheap. Since it is cheap, there are more customers coming in, and since there are more customers coming in, the amount of support that can be given to each customer is very less. However, if you go to VPS or managed servers and higher cost servers, then the support quality also goes up. So for Digital Deepak, I am spending around $60 a month on hosting, and I am using a hosting service called WPX Hosting, which is a managed WordPress hosting service. And the amount of support that I get from these people is way higher than what I would get from a shared hosting. But it makes sense because Digital Deepak now gets a lot of traffic, and I need to have good uptime, and I cannot afford the website to be down even for a small amount of time, so I am paying higher. But however, when you are just getting started, it is recommended to go for shared servers, but you should also understand that the support level that can be given for the shared servers is going to be very less. So hosting price versus quality levels. So basic shared hosting, it's up to 100, up to 500 rupees or up to $10 a month. You will get low quality support, and if you are sending email support tickets, you will have very long turnaround time. Sometimes they will reply after a day or after 2 days. So I will show you a solution for that as well. But you have to understand that the amount of one-on-one support that can be given from these hosting companies is going to be very less, and it's going to be slow, because obviously you are paying much less for the shared server. If you are going for a high quality managed WordPress hosting, which is mostly more than 1000 rupees, or more than $25 a month, then you will get good chat support and quick email reply. So for example, when I said I use WPX hosting, if my site goes down or even if there is a plugin error inside the WordPress system, the support people are usually very responsive and they solve the problem within 1 or 2 hours whenever I email them. And if you are having a dedicated server with a dedicated technician, then you have the total control over uptime and the quality of the hosting service. But that you can go only if you are getting more than 10,000 visitors a day or 20,000 visitors a day. Then you will be able to go for a dedicated server. There are many hosting companies which offer dedicated servers, or you can have your own dedicated server in a server farm, which we will talk about more in the future videos. So right now, where should you host to start with? So you should start with a shared hosting server because obviously that's the cheapest. But what if your site goes down, or what if the support is very unresponsive and they reply only after 1 or 2 days, and you don't want your site to be down for 1 or 2 days? You should always have backups, and if a server disappears, even if the entire server company disappears or the servers get physically damaged or if there is any error, then you can move your files to another server and change the year record to point to a new IP address. So this I will explain more in the live videos. So basically you have the DNS settings, where in the previous video we talked about domain names having this record called a record, and this is going to point to an IP address. So instantly you change your server and change the IP address on the domain name, change the record so that it points to the new IP address, and your website will be up and running again in no time. You can scale up to managed WordPress hosting services when you can afford it. When your site starts making revenue, you will be able to spend more on hosting. And once you get to that level, then it's complete peace of mind, because the hosting support people are going to take care of your website for you, and they will be able to provide dedicated support because you are paying a high price for it. So what are the cheap shared server options do we have? We have these companies like HostGator, Bluehost, GoDaddy, SiteGround, and recently I discovered a Indian company called Visual CloudX, which offers pretty cheap hosting services. So these are the different hosting options. You can find banners and links below this video for all these companies, and these are exclusive discount links where you can get exclusive discounts as a part of Digital Deepak and as a part of this course. So I would recommend that you are never dependent on your hosting company for uptime and managing your website, because shared hosting companies cannot and do not provide good quality support. So your website goes down, then have a backup, put your website files on another server, and just change the IP address on your domain name or the year record on your domain name so that your website is up and running instantly. So when we go into future videos, we will also talk about the various types of backup plugins that you have and how you can restore your WordPress blog from using the backup directly into another server, and then change the IP address on the domain name just to point to the new server. So this we will do a live demonstration in the future videos. But for now, just understand that you should always have your files with you. You should always have total control over your domain name. And whenever there is a problem with the server, or if they are unresponsive, you should just be able to take your files, put it on another server, and point your domain name to the new server IP address. So this is something you can do, and this is something you should always keep in mind. So where to configure the DNS? So every time you sign up with a hosting provider, the hosting provider will give you something called name servers, which you update on your domain name. But I would not recommend doing it, because the name servers provided by the hosting provider is not always of very good quality and does not have good flexibility. I also recommend that you go ahead and keep your domain name and hosting separate. It should always be separate, and do not go ahead and buy the domain name along with the hosting company, because many times many hosting companies do not provide a clear configuration module for the domain name. For example, from what I have seen, if you are purchasing the domain name from HostGator or Bluehost along with the hosting package, then what happens is that you will not be able to do custom DNS configuration in it. However, from what I have seen, if you sign up on GoDaddy, then you will be able to do custom configuration. So as much as possible, do not use the name servers provided by the hosting provider. go ahead and use Amazon Route 53 or Cloudflare. And I will be explaining how to use Amazon Route 53 or Cloudflare in the future videos when I set up my own blog, and you will clearly understand how the different record types work and how the IP address pointing works. But for now, just understand that don't use the name servers provided by the hosting provider. So whenever you sign up for a hosting account, they will send you a welcome email, and in the welcome email you will have two name servers which they will ask you to go ahead and update on your domain name configuration. Don't do that for now. And as we already discussed, you will be using A records to point to the server IP address, and there is something called TTL, which is time to live, and you should use a low TTL. So right now don't bother yourself with TTL. I will explain what TTL is in the live demos. So that's it for this lesson. I hope you had a clear idea about the different kind of hosting services, hosting companies, different kind of quality levels that you get. So what are the next action steps? So before I go ahead and demonstrate how to configure DNS, how to install WordPress and all the other steps involved in blogging, you should be ready with your web hosting account. So you can purchase web hosting account from one of the shared hosting providers for which I have provided discount links below. And then go ahead and sign up for a free Cloudflare account. I will show you how to set up Cloudflare in the live demos, but for now just set up a free Cloudflare account and do not do anything else. Or you can go ahead and sign up for an Amazon AWS account, and Amazon has this service called Amazon Route 53, which is a premium service, premium DNS service, just like Cloudflare, but it's premium. So I will show how to use that as well. So that's it for today's lesson and today's action steps. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below. And in the future videos, we will get started with the live demos where I start setting up my own blog as well. And I will show you how to do DNS settings, how to set up hosting service, and how to configure the domain names accordingly.